On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade Ajaero. He brings us up to speed on activities that happened during the 111th ILO conference in Geneva, Switzerland, while also emphasizing on the working people's expectations from the federal government. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
It's another ILO conference, and I think I'm privileged to be speaking with you. And like someone said recently, it's the first ILO that you'll be coming in as the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress. The intervention of government this year focused on child labour. So also the intervention of the Nigerian Labour Congress also focused on child labour. Why did Labour indict government towards the issue of child labour in the country? What more do you think needs to be done at this point to reduce the scourge to the barest minimum?
It's not for the purpose of making presentation at the ILO to say that Labour is indicting government. It's an obvious fact because there's a link between poverty and child labour, and clearly stated. The level of poverty of the parents affects the behavior and the way and rate at which you take care of the children. In Nigeria, persistently, the issue of poverty has been very, very critical. In a country where the country's National Bureau of Statistics described about 133 million people as being multidimensionally poor, you can imagine the level of and standard of living of children in that community. A country where workers' minimum wage is less than $50 in a month will go far to show you how the children are taken care of. A country where most governors don't pay even that minimum wage, where states like Imo State declare almost half of the workers there as ghost workers and they're not paid for about 3 years, you know what their children will turn to. The children in such situation and such environment will turn to breadwinners, and that's a fact. In these 133 million people that are multidimensionally poor, their children automatically becomes breadwinners, either through hawking or other sources of child labor. So you don't need to do any further studies to find out the link between child labor and poverty, the link between the status, social status, economic status of parents and the status of their children. In a country where equally there is no clear provision for children of certain age, where people come up to tell you that they are doing school feeding of children, and there's no statistics to show how many children that were fed at a certain period. Even during the period of COVID, when children were supposed to be with their parents in the house, you still have reports that there was this incidence of school feeding. So there's much that is to be desired in this respect. So it's true, more than even how we stated it, that Nigerian government have done little in the issue of trying to bridge the incidence of child labor. In trying to do this, you must equally look at the issue of poverty because they are interlinked.
There are lots of reactions from different stakeholders towards the Democracy Day. For the Nigerian Labour Congress and organized labour, what more do you think that the federal government and relevant stakeholders, what more do you think they can do to ensure that Nigerian workers enjoy the dividend of democracy?
From 1993 to date, it's a period of about 30 years. And it's a long period. So if we are still talking of dividend of democracy now, and we have not noticed it or started feeling it from any sector specifically or averagely, then there is more to be desired. We have said much about June 12th. June 12th is now a public holiday. Symbolically, June 12th is recognized. But to the extent it will impact on Nigerians and the dividend of democracy is what I cannot say here, economically, socially, politically. Politically, there has been elections upon elections. I don't know whether there is anyone that is better than the other. At every election, there will be criticism. There will be allegation of either the election not properly conducted, or poorly conducted, or rigged. And then the myriad of litigations that goes to the cause, is making some people to cast doubt on the type of sacrifice we made in the course of June 12th and democracy. So why we still hope that the most magnificent and magnanimous military dictatorship is worse than the most dictatorial democratic governance. The dividends are yet to reflect in terms of what goes into the pocket of the worker, what the students gets, what an average Nigeria gets in terms of infrastructure, electricity supply, water, road, education, and all whatnot. We are yet to feel this. Until then, we still hope that democracy is the best for the country.
So moving on to the next question, decent work is a global agenda for organized labor and even employers of labor in some instance. So, so far from the conversations that has been taking place at the ILO conference, would you say that the world and Africa and maybe Nigeria in particular have been meeting up with the goal of ensuring that decent work is being prioritized?
Decent work, to even the issue of recruitment of the underage by some militant groups, to be the men soldiers. Some of the underage are equally involved, in kidnapping cases where they are used, to equally transfer ransom from one place to the other. So decent work in Nigeria is still a mirage. Apart from very few, that are working in the public sector, organized public sector, that enjoys statutory flavor on their mode of work. Though with poor remuneration, a lot need to be done, especially with the influx of the informal sector. If we don't check it, the level of informal economy that we are having now, if there's no proper regulation in terms of decent work, Nigerians will be the worst for it.
By June 19th, Nigerian government and organized labor would reconvene to discuss about national issue, especially the issue of the removal of fuel subsidy. What should Nigerians and workers be expecting from organized private sector on that conversation?
I think there is an agreement, so to say, and that agreement will be given life by that date, 19th, we are talking about. And after that day, we will now know the next level moving forward. If you ask me, it was a kind of tentative agreement reached. And then we are supposed to go into the practical aspect of it, looking at the aspect of technical committees that work on the implementation of such agreement. But my own understanding is that that agreement is a clear template on how to solve a problem of subsidy and the increase in pump price of petroleum products, which has been a problem to this country for over 3 decades. If it is properly implemented, Nigerians will be happy, they will rejoice, and the government of the day will do thumbs up for bringing solution to this problem. But a deviation from that template, which came as a result of well thought out policy and analysis over the years on how to bring to an end the occurring decimal of increase in pump price of PMS and the issue of removal or non-removal of subsidy, deviation from it may create another problem for the country. That policy that we introduce of CNG will bring some level of equilibrium. It will bring the issue of alternative. It will bring a balance. It will bring a balance in the sense that you have a PMS, you have a CNG, that people are left to choose from two of them. And that overpriced PMS and an underpriced or averagely priced CNG will bring you a kind of equilibrium and bring a balance, and provide choice, and which is the same market forces they were talking about. Market forces does not thrive when you have a single participant or a single product. Now is the time we are going to know whether the cabals in government, from one government to the other, will be able to stop this alternative. And if they do that, then problem for this country.
We also know that this conference is centered towards ensuring that social justice is achieved globally. What has been the intervention so far? What were the conversations that you were able to intercede during the 111th ILO conference?
Well, year in, year out, the application of standards, has to do, it affects so many countries. You can see it's not a Nigeria-specific issue. There are some violations, human rights violations, violation of trade union rights in some countries, especially when a country goes ahead, to ratify, an ILO convention, and goes ahead to violate it. And in most instances, this year's on a lot was said about Belarus, and then the violation of trade union rights, persecution of trade union leaders, and all that. So, like Nigeria, we can't, after, ratifying the Convention on Child Labor, and still you are not, up to the record in it. So what comes is that your name will be mentioned in a special paragraph, that you have not been meeting up. And then the issue of trade union violations, and there are a lot of them. What the application of standard tries to do is to strike a balance, on how trade union rights, how conventions, are obeyed or obeyed in breach. So that has been on in all minimum wage, acts. In Nigeria, there are still areas of not, states like Imo, the way they applied it, states like Abia, states like Zamfara, and some other states. They keep on coming up, from meeting to meeting. So it has to be clearly, if you are put your hand, pen on paper, that you have ratified this convention, you don't go back, violating it.
Finally, youth unemployment seems to be a big issue in the country at the moment. What do you think the government can do to ensure that youth that are unemployed are being taken?
Well, there's nothing you can do than providing jobs. Even when you provide unemployment benefits, even when you provide other social safety nets, there are temporary measures to the unemployed or the underemployed, clearly. So job creation, is very, very critical. On the issue of providing jobs, and social protection should not be a permanent measure where people will remain there. It's like, a kind of transitional provision or arrangement where people can relax there until they get something substantial. Now, if you don't create jobs and you don't create environment necessary for jobs to thrive, if you don't have good roads, if you don't have security, because no matter how your economy runs, if there's no security for investors, they will not be around. If you don't have proper energy sector, where you don't have power, to power your factories and companies, then it will be difficult for you to provide job. And job security is very, very important. So if you have proper job security, people will transit to the temporary measure, of enjoying all those social security and then move to paid employment or move to employment, or people who want to invest can go even into investment, because the environment is ripe, because they can move their goods and services from one point to the other, because they can power their generators, to facilitate production in their camps. So if all these things are not there, no matter the level of social protection you are taking, it will lead to a kind of saturation on the people that are in that bracket. So it should be such that people, okay, we are enjoying social security, you are paying me 20,000 every month unemployment benefit. If we are 50 in that bracket, the next month, if 30 of us gets job, it reduces it. So they keep on moving. I think those are the things that government should look at moving forward.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.